How did I get into speaking? It's kind of simple, to be honest. I got into speaking about 6 months after I was injured. I was going through the recovery process, and one of the nurses asked me to visit a patient who had just arrived in the hospital, was having a very difficult time with, his new reality and his injury and everything that comes with that. And she said, "Why don't you go in and talk to him?" And I said, "No, I'm 20 years old. What am I going to say to him that's going to help him?" And she said, "Just go in and talk to him and tell him how things have gotten better for you and improved." And I'm like, "I'm not doing it." And literally there was this tussle back and forth of like, "No, go in there. No, go in there. No." I finally was like, "Fine, I'll do it." Kind of like a child does to a parent. "Fine, I'll go in." And I remember opening the door and it was completely dark in the room. He had the lights off, the curtains closed. In the middle of the day, it was pitch black. And I immediately, standing in the doorway, I got this feeling in my stomach, like this pit in my stomach where I was like, I don't want to walk in this room. Like, that dude's not in the good place. I feel the energy. I don't. And I stood there, which of course felt like forever, but it was only a few seconds. And I remember coming to this conclusion. If I walk out of this room, what message is that going to send to him? Now, he may have not thought anything of it. He may have been like, oh, somebody just walked into the wrong room. He may not have really paid attention. He may have thought it was one of the nurses, doctors, whatever. But for me, I was like, I can't walk out. And I remember starting to walk into the room, and I walked up to his bed, and I asked him 3 simple questions. I asked him what his name was, where he was from, what unit he was with, and what happened. 45 minutes later, I said, "Hey man, I'm gonna come back tomorrow and check on you." He said, "I'd appreciate that." I was like, "You need me to bring anything?" He says, "Nope, all I need is a visit." That's literally where it all started, because when I walked out of that room, I noticed something different than when I walked into the room. The light above his bed was turned on, and the curtain, he was opening it. There was natural light coming into the room. And I know some people would kiss that up as a coincidence. To me, it's not a coincidence. To me, that was literally life saying, I gave him some hope. I shed some light on this dark space that he was in life. Instead of ignoring that and saying, well, that's cool, I actually started visiting patients every single day. But see, if I would have just avoided that feeling that I had in my stomach, if I would have just said, no, I'm walking out of this room, if I never would have even accepted or agreed to going into that room and speaking to that patient, I probably would never be here today. So when people ask me, how did you get into speaking? I want to be a speaker. I want to be booked. I didn't start having an agent, having a manager, doing audiences of 500 people, 1,500 people, 30,000 people. No, I started in a space that I felt comfortable talking about something that was very real to me, that I knew people would embrace it and receive it. And I just kept building outside of that. But you know what I did most importantly is when people think of you're a speaker, they immediately think I have to always be talking. I spent a lot of time then when I started speaking, listening. I would walk into those rooms and just ask a question and listen. And they would talk and talk and talk, and I would just listen. Even now, doing this as long as I've been doing, even when I'm on stage and I'm the one talking, I'm still listening. I'm paying attention to the audience. If people feel like they're vibing with what I'm saying, the joke or whatever, and I make adjustments in real time as I'm going through it. That's how I got into it. But one of the things that I had to learn was, listen, I'm comfortable speaking. I could talk all day. But what am I saying, right? And that's what I really had to learn, is that even though I'm given the opportunity to come and speak, it isn't just enough to just talk and speak. What are you saying? And so I had to spend a lot of time understanding my story and different components of my story that are relatable, that, there's takeaways, there's different messages with what I'm sharing. And once I understood that, then I was speaking with intention. Then there was a goal. Then there was an outcome. Then there was a takeaway. I was intentional about what I was setting out to do. It wasn't just me blobbing, which if you know me, you know I could do that all day. Find yourself a nice chair and some shade under a tree. That's life. All right, but that's not what I'm here to do. So from a speaking standpoint, I'm very intentional about what I do. So what I've discovered that in my story, I have a very unique story. Not everyone has experienced what I've experienced. So how do I extract certain components of my story that will be relevant to the audience? People that have not walked in my shoes, people that have not experienced what I've experienced. And sort of kind of create these pillars, if you will, like where it's like, this is the things that my story encompasses. My story encompasses service. I love service. I love to be of service to people, to help people. I love to always listen, and that's been a key component as to what has allowed me to be successful in life, is just paying attention and listening to different things over the course of my life. I've also dealt with a lot of change, and what has change presented to me? What has it taught me? I've learned, people talking. I think they want to be in the video. But I've learned like change. I've learned how to be on a team. The importance of being a team player, the importance of putting your ego aside. Like there's so many things that I really focus on. The importance of being innovative and continuously finding ways to grow and evolve and not just become stagnant and comfortable. So I'm very intentional about it. And for me, everything that I get to do is always rooted in this space of service. I'm offering a service. I'm giving something to other people, to the people that are listening. And that's why I find joy in it still to this day. The cool thing is I just try to touch on all these different angles because I know every audience member is in a different place in their life. Everybody's going to take something completely different. One person, two people sitting right next to each other, one person's going to say, this is what I took away from that. Meanwhile, the person next to him is like, I didn't hear any of that. This is what I took away from that. I just am always looking for ways to evolve and to grow as a speaker. And it all goes back to that very simple thing of like, you have to be willing to be vulnerable on stage. I am incredibly vulnerable. I show my scars, and I'm not just talking about these scars. I'm talking about the stuff that's internal, the stuff emotionally and mentally that is difficult, that I don't really talk about. For a long time, I didn't talk about a lot. And that's another key, and I'll say this last thing. Early in my speaking career, I found myself hiding behind this image of me being a soldier and someone that served, and my scars and my recovery. I wasn't really being vulnerable. I wasn't talking about the dark times. I wasn't talking about how I was angry and resentful at life and that period of my life. I wasn't talking about those things. I wasn't really being vulnerable. And it wasn't until I really understood and accepted the challenge of be vulnerable, man. Be vulnerable. It's scary. You're in front of 25, 200 people, 2,000 people you don't know. Be vulnerable. I don't care about the judgment. This is my truth. This is my experience. I'm being honest. I'm being real. And what I have discovered in that, as Brene Brown says, I think it's Brene Brown, that in vulnerability you find community. What I've discovered is I have community. I have more of an impact when I'm willing to be vulnerable and honest and raw. If you want to be a speaker, people sometimes get so focused on, well, I want to speak to big audiences, and what they're missing out on is the simple opportunity to just speak to the next person you're in front of. One person, maybe two people, maybe three people. Start there. That's it.